Welcome, family, friends, patrons, and general public. This talk today is an introduction to various auctions of works by the Giovanni Martino family. Giovanni, Eva, Babette, and a few pieces of mine. They will take place over a period of 14 months, beginning tomorrow, October 13th, 2019, and ending in December 2020. These works have been in storage for various years, some never exhibited, and others that have won major awards. The net proceeds will go to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, where all four of us are alumni and included in their collections. The Giovanni Martino Family Endowment was formed in 2013 and will sponsor gifted students. Today, I will give a brief account of my life, what it was like growing up in a world where living to create was a priority, and how it has influenced me throughout my life. Can you imagine being born into a family where the father, all of the uncles, and my mother are all artists? This was my family. Did I have a choice as to my future? I ate, slept, played, dreamed, breathed, turpentine, varnish, paint, and was surrounded by drawing tablets, pencils, canvases, easels, brushes, even our vacations entailed the four of us gathering first and foremost our drawing and painting supplies, and then making room for everything else. There were three of us, my older brother Ronald, me, Nina, and my younger sister Babette. Ronald was reckless, restless, and a rebellious soul, with no intention of conforming. Babette, not totally convinced, eventually was reconciled. I was enamored from the start. 4 out of 5, 2 out of 3 is laudable. My parents were satisfied, not overjoyed. Babette and I did everything together. We attended the same schools, traveled abroad, and received the same degrees. Our mother Eva insisted that we become educated, self-sufficient, independent women. Our father Giovanni was supportive. Life was a merry-go-round, a whirlwind of exhibitions together, awards, notoriety, family drawing, and critique sessions. My father Giovanni and his 6 brothers, Albert, Antonio, Ernest, William, Edmund, and Frank, who was the oldest and the founder and inspiration behind the first commercial art studio in Philadelphia in the 1920s. It was located on 27 South 18th Street. They were a successful and homogeneous team. Each brother worked in a specific area, and they did projects for all of the major commercial enterprises, to name a few: Coca-Cola, Bell Telephone, General Electric, and Campbell's. Their mother passed away in her 40s in childbirth, and a stepmother, who favored her own sons, forced the boys to leave the family home. 2 of the brothers became fine artists, achieving the highest honor in the United States of America, that of a National Academician. Giovanni, the youngest ever to become a member in the history of the organization, and Antonio. Vincent Nardone, president of the Audubon Artists of America, New York City, wrote in a recently published anniversary catalog entitled "The Martino Family, a Symbiosis with Audubon Artists." He wrote the following: In 1945, Giovanni Martino and his brother Antonio were invited to become elected members at the onset of the Audubon Artists Renaissance. The Martino brothers exhibited that year, along with 300 of the most celebrated American artists ever to show at the iconic National Academy galleries. Give credit to the art phenomenon John Taylor Arms, vice president of both the Audubon and the National Academy. It is no wonder that John and his colleagues pulled off this historical event at the National Academy. Of course, it was a slam dunk decision by the board to invite Giovanni, especially since he had just been inducted as a National Academician. Giovanni developed a metaphoric interpretation of life around him through his powerful, regionally identifiable paintings, and his work is undeniably American. 5 days a week, my father would go to the studio in Philadelphia and take the train from 9 to 5, and on weekends in his studio at home or out to nature, he would search for subjects, sometimes spending the entire day all plein air. Many weekends and all vacations, our family, which was my mother, my sister, and myself, we would accompany my father to either Essington or Manayunk. Longer vacations, we would go to Long Beach Island, New Jersey, Maine, and Massachusetts to paint on the spot, on location. Dad retired in 1950 from the commercial art studio, and he dedicated his time to painting and taught at Lehigh University for a number of years. He submitted his paintings and was invited to participate in major museums, galleries, and exhibitions, where he won well over 100 awards, and purchased prizes and honors, and sold numerous works. Gio was always ready and willing to help us with our sketches, paintings, critique them, and give us invaluable pointers, and also with our homework, especially mathematics. He was never without a pencil in his hand or a book, taking notes. He was brilliant. My mother, Eva, also had her own studio at home, where she would put a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door, where she would paint for hours. Mom always found time, though, to design and make beautiful dresses for us, my sister and me, set up still lifes, to paint and teach us to make lists and schedules to organize our time. She was an excellent cook, and she preferred to do the preparation of meals on her own. Babette and I were in charge with setting lovely tables and doing the cleanup afterwards. She taught us to be independent, insisted that we study and achieve the highest degree in our chosen field. Mom wanted us to call her either Puggy or Evie. She was always interested in art, fashion, and was outstanding in school. Growing up with 3 sisters, Marie, Yolanda, and Jay, schooling was not a priority. Evie never finished high school and when growing up. So when Babette and I both received our master's degree and we were teaching, my mom went back to school, received her high school diploma, and went on to receive credits towards a Bachelor of Arts degree. She then taught classes in various schools in the area, continued painting, exhibiting, winning prizes, and became interested in sculpting. She would look for burrows, interesting trunks and branches that she would carve, use a chisel and wooden hammer to create beautifully sanded, finely polished, abstract, 3-dimensional forms. She also worked in wax and clay, made a clay depiction of one of our dogs, a Weimaraner Baron Adolf, that was casted in bronze, plus a wax mask of Giovanni. Evie exhibited extensively and won over 50 awards. Vincent Nardone, the president of the Audubon, also wrote in the anniversary catalog, Eva, as a painter, is adventurous and chose her own path by developing a style different from all of the Martinos. She was awarded the Gold Medal of Honor in oils for her painting entitled The Chicken House. My sister Babette, she won honors and prizes, approximately 80, and was awarded a Pew Fellowship. Very important honor. We were very close. We studied and we traveled together to Italy, Mexico for our Masters of Fine Arts degrees, to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, to Temple, Tyler for our Bachelor of Arts degree. Babette lived with my parents full-time and would frequently go to artist colonies in New York State, Virginia, California, to name a few. I was back and forth to Mexico, where I stayed 6 months out of the year. We coordinated so that I would be home when Babette was away. She taught at Utica College in New York State for numerous years and then stayed home and painted full-time. She never married, but had a meaningful relationship with a a composer, Bill Kraft, timpanist conductor, who also gave workshops throughout the states and was based in Hollywood, California. And with Pedro Friedeberg, a friend and well-known artist living in Mexico, whom she called her muse. On weekends and during the week, when we were all relatively free, we would sketch and take turns posing for each other, or paint portraits in oil. Vincent Nardone writes about Babette. Babette began to show at the Audubon Artists of America in 1980, and after consecutive oil painting awards in 1982 and 1984, she became an elected member. Her dramatic imagery of the Philadelphia suburban landscapes was captured in a modern-day surrealistic style. As for me, Vincent writes, Nina's genre of powerful depictions of classical versus avant-garde Philadelphia scenes reflect an enhanced evolution of history, past and present day. I was born on a Wednesday, December 9th, at 3 a.m., and was later informed how unusual it is for babies to gain weight before leaving the hospital. I gained weight. My destiny was predetermined. The kitchen is my favorite spot. I could live there, and I must literally do. If you love to eat, then you learn to cook. I never tire of experimenting and improving upon my own concoctions. This is my favorite pastime. At the age of 3, my father noticed that I was a lefty. He forced me to switch, as his way of thinking was that there are so many things that we have to cope with in life, why add one more difficulty to the list? Everything is equipped for right-handed individuals. I'm not sorry, I'm grateful. I sometimes do things subconsciously as a lefty, but I am not totally ambidextrous. Also, at the age of 3, my mom, Evie, would set up objects for me to draw, paint in the garden. I had pencils, crayons, paints, brushes, and my own tablet. My sister came along 2 years later, and I was her caretaker teacher. In primary school, there was an art teacher, Miss Purdy, and I was awarded the first prize on an all-green scene with rabbits hopping about. I used a palette knife for the first time. The Penguin School wanted to purchase the painting, but my parents did not want to give it up. The first family exhibition where I was included took place at the Woodmere Museum. I was 12 years old. It was an extended family show, including uncles and aunts. Throughout primary, junior high, and high school, I was a loner. With a few special friends, I had no interest in studies. I preferred gazing out the window at the scenery, totally lost in my daydreams and adventures. I could not wait to discover the outside world. Once out of high school, I received a scholarship to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in Philadelphia. The teachers were relatively well known in the art world. My favorite classes were with Walter Stumpfig and Hobson Pittman. They were critiques. And before continuing my education, I decided that I wanted a job. 1 year in an insurance company as the overzealous boss's private secretary was enough to make me change my mind and decide to take my studies seriously. By the time my sister graduated high school, I was desperate to go to Florence, Italy. Babette and I applied to the l'Accademia di Belle Arti in Firenze through the consul, and we both won and received scholarships. My father was the adamant objector, but he was eventually convinced by my mom that my sister and I could manage together. So Gio finally gave in, and off we went. We arrived at a memorable time in history, November 1966, when the Arno flooded, killing 100 people, over 100 people, damaging and destroying millions of masterpieces and rare books. It is considered the worst flood in the city's history since 1557. The wall in the main square is inscribed with a watermark where it arrived at 13 feet. I can remember dead cows and animals floating in the streets. Some of the students that we met at the time it happened warned us to go back to our lodging. We had arrived and were staying at a convent at the very top of Fiesole, in a Etruscan hill town, high above Florence. We had no idea what was happening. With a smattering of Italian, we marched the following week into the city dressed to the hilt, demanding to know why the academia was closed. We were smattered by angry onlookers with mud. Once we realized the disaster that had taken place, we offered our help. Among many volunteers, Babette and I were known as the Gli Angeli del Fango, Mud Angels, as we worked many hours and days in the library helping to restore magnificent, ancient, irreplaceable volumes of books. 3 years in this magnificent environment convinced me that I would travel for the rest of my life. The thrill of being in a country with a history and buildings that dated back to the Renaissance was overwhelming. The teaching method at the academia was disappointing. The professors were adamant about us changing our style and did not want us to paint realistically. They forced modern abstract upon us. I made a few non-objective paintings, but continued to paint in the classical manner. One lifelong lesson that I learned from a professor was that of observation. Our class was held outdoors, and we were told to find a minute plant, flower, seed pod, and work it up. Make it as detailed as possible. Capture every specific aspect in black and white. Pencil with using a variety of shading methods, concentrating on light and shadow. There's so much that we miss in life, not being taught from early childhood the art of observation. I was taught to observe by my parents, but not to this extreme. On a small plot of earth, an incredible amount of activity takes place. So many tiny life forms exist and are constantly fending to survive. We step on them, not realizing that we could be destroying their habitat, destroying them. Sit one day and take note, and perhaps you will be more cautious where you step and tread lightly. I became fluent in Italian and had to take oral and written exams. I learned to dissect a cadaver, had to memorize, depict, and identify organs, all in Italian. I passed, not with flying colors, but good enough to graduate and receive my degree, attend commencement day in cap and gown in the Renaissance style, as did Babette. We were also in Italy at the time of the worldwide 1968 student protests. The students at the academia took advantage, locked the professors out, and we were locked in. Photographers for a newspaper were permitted to enter to take photographs. The reporters instructed Babette and me to stand in the front, behind a barrier with wooden bars, to look angry with our fists raised in the air. The rest of the students were placed in the background. We were honored that they should choose us. The results, to represent the student body, the results, an enormous photograph plastered on the front page of the National Communist newspaper. Angry students lock professors out and take possession of l'Accademia di Belle Arti in Firenze, Italy. We feared that our passports would be taken away, not permitted to return to the States, and possible incarceration. When things calmed down and classes resumed, we were followed numerous times by the carabinieri, Italian police. Whether it was for our own safety or to assure them that we were not agitators, we never know. Babette and I would, many days usually, arise early, look for subjects, set up our easels outside, and spend the morning painting. We were always looked after by kindly Italians, and we had once chosen, as for an example, we had once chosen a subject in a field of high weeds. When we returned the following day, the weeds had been cut down. We later learned that the snakes were known to inhabit that area, and for that reason, they had eliminated the weeds. Evie and Gio visited us, and we all painted together. We traveled to surrounding cities in Tuscany, to Rome, to the Vatican. We made our wishes and threw coins in the Trevi Fountain to assure a return to this magnificent part of the world. Once back in Bluebell, we resumed our studies at Temple University, Tyler School of Art. Credits from the academia, and our master's degree were accredited to a BFA, and we completed our bachelor's of fine art in 1 year, and I made the dean's list. We both acquired teaching jobs in nearby boroughs. Mine was in a middle school teaching art. I wrote a curriculum that entailed the students to paint murals throughout the school, and it was accepted by the principal. The ninth grader loved the project. They were studying prehistoric times, so our theme was chosen for us. They made intricate watercolor studies, and we all chose the ones that we would reproduce from the sketches. They painted cavemen, bears, the hunt, cave drawings on the walls. The students could not wait for art class. Babette had been investigating a master's degree in Mexico, the Instituto Allende in San Miguel de Allende, affiliated with the University of Guanajuato, and convinced me to accompany her on our next adventure. San Miguel Allende in 1974 was a small city of 25,000 inhabitants. Today, it is a #1 small tourist town in the world, and there are approximately 150,000 inhabitants. At that time, it was known as an artist colony, mainly among the military, war veterans, who were given grants to study with the then popular muralists in the 40s and 50s, Diego Rivera and David Alfaro Siqueiros. It's a beautiful hill town, nestled and surrounded by the Sierra Madre mountain range, cobblestone streets, ideal temperate weather, and a large foreign community. It made it a haven for both of us. Every street view was a subject waiting to be painted. An MFA was offered in a year. The instructors were foreign, mainly from the USA and Europe. All classes were in English. Spanish was one of the obligatory subjects. We were both courted by bullfighters, visited brave bull ranches, indulged in barbecued goat, cauldron fried carnitas, paella. Every weekend was a celebration. Mexicans love to party. Birthdays, saints' days, there's a holiday for every occasion. Any excuse to eat, drink, play music, sing, and dance. We painted and studied weekdays and celebrated weekends. My bullfighter was an engineer, architect, city planner in public works and urban planning. He ran for mayor against the pre-party, the PAN, Melchor Larrea Ceballos. His father was of Basque descendants, and his mother mixed Indian heritage. He was tall, slender, and resembled Tony Curtis. He was very serious with a dry sense of humor. He had very few close friends, and his family always came first. We married and were together for 36 years. When building the agencies for the Corona Beer Company, Melchor always promoted me as an artist. He was a very serious individual that you could always count on to be there and help in whatever way he could. He introduced me to the agency directives, and I executed various studies to choose from. Commissions for a mural, 2 street scenes for the owner of the Corona where he grew up, portraits, bullfight paintings for other agency directors. Through various connections from an artist in Mexico City, I had a one-person exhibition at the Gallery Michelet. A fantastic experience that was widely publicized in all the national newspapers. I taught for 2 years various art classes and created syllabuses at the Instituto Allende a few years after receiving my MFA. My favorite classes were when I would take the students to various pueblos for the day to paint landscapes out plein air. I also managed to paint a body of new work, sufficient to have another one-person show in Mexico City at the Mexican-American Institute for Cultural Relations. A very rewarding and successful experience. My time was divided between Philadelphia and San Miguel de Allende. When in Philadelphia with my family, I would paint landscapes, exhibit them at various family shows, go out subject hunting together, spend time promoting and readying for upcoming shows. In 2005, we had our first traveling show, family exhibition. The Martinos, a family legacy. Well-known artist curated the event, Gary Irby. It was organized by the Butler Institute of American Art in conjunction with the Woodmere Art Museum. Beautiful catalogs were published. I will close with comments by the director of the Butler Institute of National Art and by the national and internationally well-known artist Gary Irby. An introduction by Louis Zona, the director of the Butler Institute of American Art, cited that the Martinos are one of America's most talented families of painters. One can recall that in the history of art, there have existed few such families of professional artists. In the case of the Martinos, the level of achievement is both impressive and inspirational. Art, in the final analysis, is about beauty, and the Martino family of painters have devoted their lives to the revelation of the beauty that surrounds us. They have used their wonderful gift to raise our awareness of an aesthetic universe that exists within the commonplace, and for this we offer great praise and our eternal gratitude. Gary Irby, the curator for the exhibition, gives a short bio about each member of the family and writes that each Martino has explored a universal concept, doing so in a typically personal manner. There are comparisons, yet they each stand distinctly apart in an unbroken mold. Their contribution to American art is enormous, and their work has a broad appeal. This in itself makes the Martino family a national treasure.